it's been a while, and it's not because I haven't been working on the motorcycle. It's because I've been waiting on parts to show up, and in the meantime, I've been doing a lot of back-end work on my own to really design this bike and show you guys how I want this thing to look. Now, I use a software called Autodesk Fusion 360, and in no way was I ever trained to be an engineer or ever trained in how to use the software properly. I learned all of this from YouTube videos and just consistently trying new things. I've had so much fun working in CAD, and it almost makes me want to go back to school and become a mechanical engineer. But from what I've learned, it gets the job done for me, and I recommend if you're into this type of stuff, definitely get into it because it's very satisfying, and you could essentially build motorcycles in 3D space all day long. So hopping into the design, I wanted to talk about the seat and the fairing. As you can see, the bike is pretty modern looking, and although it's a 1970s bike, it's gonna have modern tech on it. Now, that was in heavy consideration when I designed the seat, and looking at the seat, it's got some pretty cool shapes that kind of pay tribute to what would be on a modern sport bike today. Now, I got extremely lucky because someone had modeled a CB550 frame and made it available for download. Of course, at the first sign of that, I downloaded it right away and was able to model this seat around it. Without the frame, it's kind of tough because you got to model the frame and make sure that it's dimensionally accurate. Now, the shape of the tank really plays a part in how this seat is looking. I really want to follow the tank line into the seat and to make sure that it complements the tank very well. Now, the tank I did not find online, and I had to model it myself, but overall I think it's pretty close, so we'll get a good idea of how it's going to look when the bike's mocked up. It took me about a day to model this seat, and once it's ready to go, I will then split it off from the design, as you can see here, and I will then split this into sections so that I can 3D print it. When I 3D print it, this is what it looks like. And this is just PLA plastic. It's very easy to print, and my 3D printer by no means is a professional quality one or anything special. It's pretty basic, but in order for me to really get this shape and then turn it into a mold for carbon fiber, 3D printing is the way to go. I will say that this took 3.5 days to print, and this is just 1/4 of the seat. So I have the other part of it printing right now, and that'll be done later today. Once the parts are done, then I will glue them together, and this will be what's formed as a plug. A plug is the part that you want to make a mold from. And in my case, I want this to be made out of carbon fiber. So this will be a plug, turned into a mold, and then eventually vacuum bagged and turned into a carbon fiber component. So I'm extremely excited about that because the thing came out really good, as you can see here on the bike, and it's a pretty cool process that I enjoy doing every single day. Now, as you can see, I've gone through a couple iterations of this seat, and what's cool about 3D printing is that, yes, it takes time, but you get to see the part before you would actually go and invest the time and the money to really make it proper. Another cool thing about CAD is that I can see the lines of the bike already without even having to put the bike together. And all of these things are dimensionally accurate. So this is a 17-inch wheel with the specs of a slick that would be there. So I can see the spacing between the wheel and the fairing or the suspension, and really kind of work my way through this bike to make sure that all of the components work together hypothetically. There's always going to be situations where you got to cut things or shim things or make things work with other parts, but this will get you pretty damn close. Now, the fairing is about 50% of the way done, and I will definitely be adding some vents and things like that because this is an air-cooled engine, and I want as much cooling to the engine as possible. So I can't restrict airflow to the fins on the head and the cylinder too much because the engine will overheat. As you can see, the shape of the front of the bike is almost there. It kind of looks like a mouse right now, but I definitely have some work to do on this. But overall, I just wanted to get the shape and some of the lines that will be followed into the seat lines pretty much in place. Now, along with this seat and the fairing that'll be completely custom made, I did get some new parts from Cognito Moto and Dime City Cycles, which I show later in this video, and I'm extremely excited to put them on this bike because this thing is going to be absolutely insane. Make sure you stick around and see those parts at the end, and if you're new here, please subscribe and like because it really helps with the algorithm. I've been paying attention to the single overhead cams form, and I've been going through countless threads trying to pull out information that I think is going to be useful for this build. I came across a thread from a well-known contributor and an avid road racer, and he's using a CB650 oil pan and oil pump in his CB550. Now, what's interesting to me is that the CB650 oil pump is a higher capacity pump. So that means that it pushes more oil through the engine. And in my case, since I'm going to be running an oil cooler, I think this is perfect for what I need. The CB650 oil pan is also deeper and it features what's called a windage tray. Now, in road racing, you're changing speed and direction extremely fast. Whether you're accelerating down the straight or braking hard for the corner or turning the thing over, the oil in the engine is always moving around. And a windage tray helps to slow it down. It ensures that the oil pickup never loses suction of oil, and it kind of keeps the oil in place. For me, this is perfect, and so I'm going to go through the trouble of making it work. It's not as straightforward as bolting the parts on. You need to do some modification to the oil pickup on the CB550 because there's an outlet on that pickup that needs to be ran in order to suck up oil. I wouldn't recommend doing this for a average street bike because you're not gonna really put it through the conditions that you would on the track, and I don't think it's worth the trouble. But in my case, I think it's perfect, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Alright, so to make this work, I'm going to have to cut off the feet on this thing and extend the neck so that it drops lower into the oil pan and grabs the oil. The 650 pan has feet already inside of the pan, you can see right here, and so I don't need it on this. So I'm going to head over to the lathe and make some of those parts, but let's get to it. This piece will get welded to the pickup, and it'll extend it into the bottom of the pan, and we should be good to go. It has been raining nonstop, and I'm still waiting on some parts to show back up so that I can finish the engine. My crank is currently at APE, and I'm waiting on a set of custom Wiseco pistons. In the meantime, I bought a GSXR 1000 front end, and this is off a bike from 07-08. The forks are in great condition, it's just a little bit dirty and they need some seals. I've ridden a couple bikes with some modern front end conversions, And typically most people don't really fix the offset. In my case, since I want this thing to perform on a track, I had to make a couple decisions. First off being the wheel size in the front. Most of the vintage race guys ran 18 or 19s up front, but since then the 17 has become the standard for race tires. And with that, you get a lot more options. Since I want to run race slicks or something close to it, I've made the decision to go with the 17. To run a spoked wheel on this GSX-R front fork, I've got a custom front hub coming from Cognito Moto. This will allow me to run spoked wheels, which isn't ideal for the race side of things, but it's better than buying a $3,000 set of mag wheels. I'm gonna have to consider the stock spring rate in this GSX-R fork because it may be a little bit too stiff for my application. So later on down the line, I may need to change springs or get the fork revalved, but only time will tell. I need to ride the thing first before I make that decision. My custom hubs from Cognito Moto showed up, and these things are absolutely beautiful. It's a solid piece of aluminum that's been machined, and the finish is pretty crazy. What's cool about these hubs is that it is a disc conversion hub, so I can run a disc brake on the rear. The disc comes from a Ducati Monster, and there's a brake carrier that's accompanied with this hub so that I can run a Brembo rear brake. What's also cool is that it has the ability to run the stock cush drive from the stock CB550 hub. Now, what a cush drive does is it basically dampens the blow from the engine through the drivetrain. The last thing you want to do is just blow apart your transmission, so the cush drive is a great option to have on there, and it's pretty much insurance that your tranny is gonna be okay. This is the custom brake hanger for the Brembo caliper that I'll be running. It's also custom from Cognito. This is sold separately, so make sure you pick that up if you are gonna run this rear hub. And onto the front hub. Now the front hub is made for a GSX-R front end. Even though it's all custom machined, it'll still run the stock bearings and the spindle spacer. It also will accept the stock GSX-R axle. Now what's cool about this is a pretty much bolt-on solution for a spoked wheel on a GSX-R front end. They came with solid wheels, and since I didn't have the option to run a solid in the rear, this is the best bet. In terms of finish and machine finish, these things are perfect, and I'll probably run them just like this on the bike. I can't wait to bolt these up to some wheels and get them on there because they look the part and very, very racy. In addition to the hubs, I also received a package from Dime City Cycles. Now, Dime City Cycles has been kind enough to help me with this build, and we ordered up a custom set of Wiseco racing pistons. Now, these pistons are high compression, and I'll put an image up right now so that you can compare the stock piston to these. But if you notice, there's a dome at the top of this thing, and the stock piston is flat. Now, the dome is what creates the higher compression ratio, and if you're compressing fuel and air inside the cylinder, this is gonna pack it tighter together and create a more efficient and more powerful burn. In the next episode, I'm gonna really break down how I'm gonna gain power from this engine and how you can assess what the weak points are of a stock engine. But for now, stoked on these pistons, and I can't wait to put them in the bike.